Is your practice tired of wrestling with insurance denials, deciphering EOBs, and watching your revenue slip through the cracks? You are not alone. Welcome to The Claim Game, the podcast designed to cut through the confusion and provide you with the best practices for revenue cycle management success. We are Jeremy and Kathryn Zug, and we've been with people just like you in the trenches. Each week, we'll break down complex billing processes, share real-world solutions from practices like yours, and ask questions of the game makers and changers of healthcare so you can take control of your revenue. Let's turn those claim denials into deposits and help you return to focusing on patient care. It's time to win the claim game.
Welcome back to The Claim Game, everybody. I'm Jeremy Zug, and this is Kathryn Zug. And as a reminder, in this season of The Claim Game, we're going through the revenue cycle management best practices one board territory at a time. Last time around the table, we interviewed Maya Topitzer about the use of AI in patient registration. It's a great episode. Feel free to go check it out. So we are just getting into the patient registration territory. Remember, these are your key territories, and mastering each one is crucial for victory and a sustainable practice long term. We're going to be using a magnifying glass to zoom in and provide specific moves within these domains, revealing the winning strategies to navigate the board with ease and confidence, ultimately claiming victory for your practice's bottom line. All right, quick reminder, if you missed the initial setup and want to understand the full scope of the board and how the 6 domains of billing work together, be sure to check out episode 1 for the complete overview. All right, we recently moved into our second territory on the RCM board, patient registration. A few rounds ago, we reviewed all the stages of patient registration, so check out round 12 if you want the overview. And today, we're going to be diving into the very first stage of that process, intake. So, Kathryn, we've talked a lot about getting our player piece on the board with credentialing. Today, we're diving into the first stage, getting other players on the board, the intake process. Can you explain this process and why perfecting it is so critical?
So intake is really that first crucial first impression.
Yeah.
And I think you probably talked a little bit about this with Uriah.
Yeah.
It's not just about paperwork. It's about collecting accurate data to prevent future rejections. It's about expectation setting. So a smooth intake sets the tone for the entire patient experience and revenue cycle. A poor process, on the other hand, can cause a patient to abandon care before it even begins. So what is it? Intake is pretty much the process from when they see your website and reach out to, well, we say intake is through when they're actually in your office.
Yeah, that's right. That makes sense. So let's talk specifically about intake. What's involved in the initial intake process from start to finish, nose to tail? Give us the full enchilada.
Well, nose to tail is all of patient registration. This is like the first portion of patient registration.
Sure.
So intake is that very first step within the patient registration territory. It is the process of, there's a lot of information gathering that happens in patient registration to establish a new patient. So from a new patient, you have to onboard them for services. So there's just a lot that you have to collect, and there's a lot that can be done poorly at this point, as intake errors are probably the number one source of claim rejections.
Well, and it makes sense, doesn't it? Right? Mm-hmm. You're moving fast, clients are stacking up, just, whoop, 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 at the front desk, so you're trying to get through them all. It's easy to get it right. Yeah, you're frustrated, you're sweating.
Yeah, so intake will cover that initial phone call. So whether that is the patient calling the office to set up an initial appointment, or if maybe they submitted a contact form on your website or whatever, however your practice is set up, it is that first information gathering conversation on the phone to the point that they're physically called out of the waiting room into an examination or service room. So that is the That is the time period that we're talking about. And that actually could be a fairly long time period, or it could be, very short if you are very efficient at this process. There's no right or wrong to that, by the way. It's just, it can vary. So you have the intake call itself, and there are different things that you have to cover on the intake call to set this relationship up for success. You're going to gather what the presenting problem is. Why are they calling you in the first place? Is this just preventative? Are they calling for a specific reason? You need to gain some information.
Yeah, what's the pickle?
Like
I'm in a pickle.
As Jeremy said, what is your pickle?
What's your pickle, man?
What's your pickle? You got to define the pickle.
But what happens next, Kathryn?
And then you have demographic information that you need to collect. So this is just basic information about the patient, name, date of birth, address. And then you're going to be limited in your ability to collect all of the insurance information. The goal on the intake call is to collect enough to perform an eligibility and benefit check. So you'll want name, date of birth, ID number, group number, subscriber information. There's a list that we will go over. And then you need to gather any additional information from the patient for a proper provider match, which we're going to talk about when we get to provider assignment and scheduling. But there's quite a few pieces of information that will help determine whether which provider in your office is going to be the best fit. You have to actually schedule the patient, which means you need to know the availability of both the patient and the provider. And then these are things that not everybody does on the intake call, but we are going to say are very crucial for really establishing that first impression well. And that would be, you need to review the next steps for them. Walk them through what they can expect after this call. You might be sending them an email while you're still on the phone and saying, hey, I just sent you an email. Can you just confirm that you got it? Because if you put their email in wrong, after the phone call is not the greatest time to find that out. No. And then you might conclude the call with a summary of what was discussed, whether that be an email or something from the portal setup page or something. So we'll go over in greater detail what we recommend for those things. But then there's this next step of intake following the intake call. That's what we call it. Literally, we call it following the intake call.
Nice.
And there are certain things that you need to do between the intake call and the patient being physically in your office. Here are those things. You need to send them an appointment confirmation. Make sure that you have reminders going out at a reasonable, tempo is the right word. But you need to have advance notice. You don't want to send it so close to the appointment that they're like, shoot, I forgot about that.
Yeah, almost to the point of being annoying. I had one recently where my doctor's appointment was...
Yes, you did.
It was like every day. And
don't forget to show up 10 minutes early.
Yeah.
Show up 10 minutes earlier.
I couldn't forget. It was impossible for me to forget, to the point that I was thinking, wow, they must really want me to show up at this appointment 10 minutes early. And then they canceled. Shout out to that provider if you're listening.
But but there's also a fine line because you were actually annoyed.
I was a little annoyed.
So I do think there's a fine line.
It was like every day leading up to the appointment, and then she canceled.
Yeah.
For what was not a family emergency. It was a real disappointment.
Yes. This is a friend of ours, and she was sick, and they called it a family emergency. And so we were like, are you okay?
So the sniffles are not a family emergency. Anyway,
she's like, I'm not. Everybody's fine.
Everybody's fine. Let's move on.
They're
here.
So dramatic. Anyway.
So appointment reminders on a good tempo.
Yes. You need to make sure that they are delivered with any of your intake forms. If you have a patient intake packet of some sort, then you would want to make sure that that gets delivered to them, which can happen via email, or maybe you have a patient portal and it's really thorough and there's a way for them to fill out forms within the portal, or it's really easy for them to upload them back into the portal. Even better, because now you have it stored properly from the get-go and you have all the information. So maybe instead of delivering the forms, you're delivering the portal information, and then within the portal is that patient intake with instructions and whatnot. You also need to complete an E&B check. You don't need that paperwork to be done in order for an E&B check to be performed if you collect the right information on the phone.
That's true.
Including some people, even during intake, will say, Can you send picture of your ID and
which you need to get at some point.
Yeah. Your ID and your insurance card right now to this, or upload this here while we're on the phone. Yeah, and anything that you can do to prompt them to do stuff while you're on the phone
is the way to go.
It's the way to go. And then you're going to need to send them some visit instructions. Let's say you have instructions for they need to bring any medication that they're on with them so that you can review it. Or they need to show up 10 minutes early. Or parking is validated through X, Y, or Z. And it's in the garage across the street on Hamilton. Anything like that that will make their experience in visiting your office easier so that they don't have to call, so that they don't feel intimidated. You want to put them at ease. And then the next step will be, and this is more of an internal process that you need to determine as a practice, but how does communication flow between the front desk and the billing department?
Usually carrier pigeon. That's usually what we see. Mm-hmm. We see a lot of that.
We do. And what Jeremy means by that is it's not very clearly defined and there's often tension. So if...
Eat that pigeon, baby. Sign up for email.
Cook it up.
Cook it up and eat it.
Yeah, what we really are getting at is if you have an admin collecting E&B information, does that then go to a biller to complete the E&B check?
Yeah.
And then once the E&B check is completed, does it go back to the admin to communicate to the patient?
That's right.
Does that come from the billing department?
Yeah.
Once claims process, if something processes incorrectly and a patient needs to be contacted, is that the biller? Is that the admin? How are they communicating to each other? And are the roles clearly defined?
Because here's what happens if the roles are not clearly defined and the communication is bad. Your biller or your front office or your patient or the clinician will want to slam their fingers in their office door for 20 minutes. And it's not very fun. So, and it's up to practice owners and up to us sometimes to make sure that we're being as clear as possible. We believe that being clear is being kind, and it's very important.
And you might be thinking, like, what does this have to do with intake?
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back to what the both the benefit and downfall of intake is the first impression. And therefore, communication is extremely closely tied to the impression that you're going to leave on your patients. Because if you don't have that sorted out, the patient's going to know. They're going to feel it.
They're going to feel it.
Mm-hmm. And then, okay, we're coming to the end of intake. What now? They come to your office, because they have very clear instructions on how to do that. And you check them in at the front desk and you confirm right there when they're standing there that you have all the forms that you need. And if you don't, what do?
Get them signed. Get
have
them filled
out right now. Although I would say if I don't have an eligibility check 24, a business day in advance, I'm calling them because I need that information before they walk in the door. Or else they're going to be on the hook for money that they won't want to pay.
That's right.
And then finally, you call them in to an examination room or service area. And that is the end of intake.
Wow.
Yes.
Incredible.
Not to mention that within intake, things that we are not deep diving into are provider assignment and scheduling, which has its own episode, and eligibility and benefit checks has its own territory.
Yeah.
So there are these massive beasts of subcategories within intake. It is a very big deal that intake is done well.
It is a big deal. It is a big deal because you have to get this right the first time with your patients. And all of you have been through this. All of you have been through a bad intake process. I have. You have. We've all been through one. And it makes you go, do I really want to be with this provider? Is it worth it? Because there's not enough investment made to allow grace for mistakes on the front end, right? It's like a bad first date.
Yeah, I mean, my primary care provider for a long time was the primary care provider that I had since I was a little girl.
Yeah.
And their office is just so dull. I know that doesn't have anything to do with formal process.
It's uninspiring.
But I swear that the paperwork that I filled out when I was a little girl is still the paperwork that they use today.
That's pretty wild.
And they've switched their patient portals like 20 times. And none of them have been great.
No, they're all bad.
But I just remember filling out paperwork in their office not so long ago, and I was like, this has been Xeroxed, and I can barely read this tiny print that is blurry.
Yeah, that was filled out in 2000 or whatever it was.
Yes.
Pretty wild.
So everything needs to have a formal process.
Yeah. All right, why is perfecting intake so important for both the patient relationship and the revenue cycle specifically?
I mean, it's just a lot of information that needs to be collected and organized in order for the relationship to really be successful.
Yeah, and you know who you can take a chapter out of their book is McDonald's, right? They make a burger the exact same, no matter if you're in Michigan or Florida or New York or California or Nevada or wherever you are. So
was that one of their guarantees at one point?
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole
you get
shtick.
The same product no matter where you go.
Yeah, that was the whole gig, right? And I think intake needs to be like that. It needs to be the exact same, no matter who's doing it, no matter what time of day they're doing it. It's the exact same process.
I mean, I think we mentioned in another round, it might have been the introduction to patient registration, but that you worked at a clinic where there was always someone different working at the front desk.
It was different every time.
Which doesn't have to be horrible.
No.
That could work.
But
you have to have such clear processes that everybody knows that are very easy to access in order for that to make sense.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
One of the worst parts of my job, seeing practices lose revenue, not because of bad care, but because their notes didn't back it up. If you're billing insurance, you already know that your notes are your defense. So if your documentation falls short, clawbacks, appeals, and a whole lot of headaches feel inevitable. One of the best parts of my job, empowering our clients to focus on their practice, not payer back and forth. A big part of that has been discovering Blueprint, an AI assistant purpose-built for mental health care. In other words, made by therapists for the way therapists work. I've seen folks start using Blueprint to help with getting progress notes done faster, but it has turned into a game changer. Blueprint drafts compliant treatment plans, visit notes, and flags any missing clinical notes, which means fewer denials, cleaner claims, and faster revenue capture. Check the notes for the link to give Blueprint a try for free.
So what resources does a practice need to have on hand to successfully complete the intake process?
Well, I think that you need to have a clear intake form or packet, which would be essential in order to gather all the necessary demographic and insurance information up front. So we have some resources that we have developed over the years, and one of them is an administrative intake form, which is actually not for the patient. It is an internal packet that is for staff, and it contains critical information for revenue cycle management that they need to collect, such as patient name, date of birth, insurance details, primary care provider information, etc. So you might wonder, well, what exists in this packet? Let me tell you. First and foremost, and I am a huge proponent of this, a script that has logic.
Oh, shocker.
So you might think like, okay, what would be on a script? Well, you're going to greet them the same way every time you answer the phone.
Yeah.
And you're going to ask about the nature of the call right away. Is this an emergency? You have an emergency protocol right at the front of the script. Then you might ask them about the presenting problem, and you're going to start gathering necessary information from them. And then you're going to get down to insurance, for example, and then you're going to start asking questions about, do you have insurance? Because guess what? If they say no and they're cash pay, I'm going to jump to a completely different section on this script, because what I'm about to ask
doesn't apply to you.
Does not apply to somebody who's cash pay.
Yeah.
Or, for example, I'm out of network. They have an insurance that we don't take. What's my out of network policy?
Yeah, you need one.
I'm not making that up on the fly, or I'm not looking around to figure out what it is. I have it right in front of me. We do the same thing every time. We give them their options, which usually looks like, well, here's our out of network policy. If you want to be seen at this office, this is what it costs to be seen out of network. We can provide you with a super bill, maybe. I don't know. That might not be what you decide, but that is an option. And these are customizable documents. Or you say, we don't accept any out-of-network patients. And then you're looking at a referral list. I'm going to jump to a section that talks about our referrals that take this insurance. Let me give you the information for a neighbor down the street that does this specialty and takes your insurance.
Yeah, that's right.
Or let's say we get down the road of the script and everything looks good and we found a provider match, but then we learn that the match is not available.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, that match is highly coveted actually, and that person doesn't have availability for the next 6 months, and your concern is a little bit more urgent than that. Now, what are my options? Well, that script is going to tell you. You can either refer them out or you can put them on a wait list that gets looked at regularly, and we'll talk more about wait list management in the future. But when there's an open spot, we'll try to get you in, but there's nothing available right now. Anyway, this script literally covers all the bases so that anyone can answer the phone. And not only that, but it might say, if cash pay, and I just go boop, and it links me to the next section, and it takes me right there. I do not have to scroll at all. It is lovely. And you don't have to feel like a robot. You're not constrained to this script. It's meant to help you, but you need to have something ready to navigate the nuances that are going to come up on the call.
Yeah, stuff's going to happen. So basically it's prescribed for you. You can handle whatever is thrown your way.
Yeah. And so the next thing about this script that is very nice is that it will likely correspond with your EHR. So what you collect in an intake call is going to be very similar to what you would put into your EHR if you're adding a patient for the first time. It's going to have a section for demographic information. It's going to have a section for insurance information, and it should be very easy to do that. And then once that's put in, now I can get them on a schedule of some sort. So that is the script. There is also a checklist, which is a pared down version of the script, because after a while, you might not need a script. I've been here for a long time. I know the script by heart. I don't need to jump around, but it's still recommended that you follow a checklist of sorts, because even your greatest employee makes mistakes, and that kind of serves as a mini audit trail that I've collected everything that I need to. The checklist is also slightly more comprehensive than just the intake call, because it might also include all the forms have been filled out for this patient. So you're going to go through the whole intake, after the intake call process with this checklist. I would recommend that you upload this checklist into the patient files once you have everything. And then one of my favorite things that exists in this packet is that we have different email templates for an appointment confirmation, and there are different templates for communicating patient benefits. So there's one for if the patient is in network, there's one for if they're out of network, there's one for if they're cash pay, that includes different information about what they will owe and when they are expected to pay it. It includes instructions about what to expect when you visit. These are things that we've discussed above, but this packet would include those templates so that you don't have to write them out every time they're canned, which is great, and they can be customized. It would include instructions for completing forms and instructions for accessing a patient portal. This might be something that you can upload right into your EHR that gets sent automatically, or it's something that you have canned in a Google Gmail account.
Which is the best, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I hate redoing work 100 times. Clickety, click, 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 send the same thing.
Yes. But that is the administrative intake form. And that's just half the equation.
What's the other half?
The other half is the patient intake form.
So one is internal, one is external.
Yes. So the patient intake form is for the patient, and it includes all the administrative details, financial policies, HIPAA agreements, and patient rights. It also sets clear expectations up front so that the patient is informed about what they need to bring to their appointment. New patient paperwork checklist. This is for the patient. So you have your own checklist as an admin in the office. This is for them. They have a checklist. Oh, I need to do all these things before I come to the office. How nice and clear is a very simple checklist for
Easy peasy.
I don't know if I've ever received that kind of thing.
No.
It's just a stack of paperwork, and I'm like, I think I did it all. I don't know.
And it's boring, and nobody wants to do it. Nobody knows what their social security number is. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I think people know their social security
Well, maybe you
number.
do. Yeah, no, that's true. That's a good point.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you might be wondering, what's in the intake form?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have the actual intake form where they collect demographic and insurance information. You have your office's financial policy that they're going to read and consent to. This is an optional one that is included in our intake packet, but might not necessarily exist in everybody's packet. After the patient financial policy form, we've also included a financial hardship application. You probably do not want to give that to every patient, but you want to have it as one of your intake packet items for when it is appropriate to give to a patient. And then authorization form for medical release is a necessary form that you have to have that on hand for every patient in order to submit claims to the insurance company.
Yeah, it makes sense. So one packet for internal use, one for the patient. And beside those packets, what other resources are needed to ensure a standardized intake process?
Well, I'm a huge fan of just having well-documented standard operating procedures.
The SOPs.
That would, yes.
Yeah.
Good old SOPs. That just would incorporate those packets that were mentioned and exactly how they're to be used. Entered into the EHR, how they're supposed to be stored. This ensures that every step is followed consistently, creating a repeatable workflow and a system for securely capturing and storing images of patient's insurance card and photo ID is essential for verification and compliance, which usually can be stored and held within your EHR. But just make sure that the security of your EHR is there, that the capability of your EHR is there. Otherwise, you have to find another place that's efficient and streamlined to store that information. And then I do think it's important to have a patient portal within your EHR that can help streamline the process. It's not a necessity, it's a preference on that one. But I do think it will help a lot to have a patient portal within your EHR. Not all patient portals are linked to EHRs.
No, they're not.
So I'm making that distinction here.
Yeah, that's true. And some look like they were built whenever we put a man on the moon. Was that in the 1960s?
Yeah,
so if you can find one that doesn't look like 1960s patient portal, that'd be great. Amazing. So what about the role of the EHR in all of this, Kathryn? How can a good electronic health record make or break the intake process? And what should a practice owner look for in their system to support a seamless experience? We don't want a seamed experience. Seamless experience.
So the EHR is really that central hub for all data. At least that's what, again, I'm looking for as a provider. I want to be able to put all my patient information in one place. I want to be able to put all of my documents in one place. I want the patient to be able to go in on the back end and request an appointment or fill out another form or review lab results. I don't know, whatever it is. So a good EHR should offer that user-friendly experience for your patient for intake forms. It's a preference, not a need. There are great ways to do this outside of an EHR. The question was, how can it help? Well, there are certainly ways that it can help. And then the other thing that a good EHR does that we haven't really spent any time on is that sometimes a good EHR system will flag missing or incorrect data or duplicate data, like you've already entered this patient before. So that will just help prevent basic clerical errors before that claim is even submitted. And then the other thing that would be a preference, but very ideal, is does the EHR integrate with other RCM tools to ensure all the data flows smoothly to billing and scheduling?
Yeah, that would be amazing. Holy cow. Imagine if that happened. Some of them do. Some of them are really good at it.
Yeah, and I don't know how much I should name names of EHRs that I have just really hated working in. But we just completed a project in Epic, which is a very well-used EHR. They have somehow cornered the market on a lot of at least local large medical systems. Yeah. And I don't know why. Yeah. I don't get it. It's so clunky. the terminology is completely different than industry standard.
Yeah, we'd be more than happy to help them if they ever wanted to reach out. But it does seem like it is very clunky, and you don't have time for that. I mean, you have time to focus on patient care, and that's pretty much it. And everything else should really fade into the background of your life.
I'm also recognizing at this very moment that I'm speaking from a position of power because I am not being told that I have to use a specific.
Oh, that's very true. Yeah. Yeah. If you have control over it.
Yes.
Great. If you don't, hang in there, right. I suppose. Yeah.
I feel like maybe there's another episode about leveraging an EHR that doesn't have these things. What can I do instead?
Oh, that's a good idea. We should do that.
Because, sometimes it's out of your control.
Yeah.
And you're just at the mercy of whatever your health system uses.
Yeah. And you have to navigate that. And we're so sorry if that's your position.
And there's cost as a consideration, too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that is the end of intake. But now, Jeremy, it's time to draw our case study card. Today's card asks, tell us about a time you saw a practice almost lose a patient or suffer significant revenue loss due to a poor intake process. Do you have a story?
Yeah. I had to ask my good friend Uriah, happy anniversary, by the way, at the time of this recording, if he had any good stories about this, since he specializes in intake. That's Uriah Guilford, by the way. He gave me a great story about a practice's intake call process. And this particular story is when a client was assigned to a clinician that didn't end up taking that client's insurance. So the intake problem was for the practice that they started to work with. Somebody assigned a client and missed in their checklist, in their logic tree, who's in network and who's out of network with that clinician or with that client's insurance. So at the end of the day, after the team tried to resolve the denials that inevitably came, they determined the client had to pay out of pocket for those sessions. The client was clearly unhappy with the process, understandably. And this happens when there's a lack of clarity in the intake process or around credentialing information.
That one's really easy to avoid, too.
Yep. Well, you'd think.
Yeah. We're going to get to provider assignment and scheduling, and there are going to be a lot of other places where provider match just goes awry, but this one can be very prevented with good intake.
That's low-hanging fruit right there.
It's a really good reminder of why this step is so essential.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so today we talked about the initiating steps of patient registration, which is intake. Mastering intake can make a world of a difference for your practice's reputation and bottom line. We discussed a few tools today, the administrative intake packet and the patient intake packet. Those are available through our online learning hub, The Hourglass. If you think those would be helpful for your practice, check out the link in the show notes to The Hourglass.
Yeah, and next time on the Claim Game, we're going to move deeper into intake. And we are going to discuss the nuances of provider assignment and scheduling and some really cool tools that exist in our Hourglass for that as well. You'll have to tune in to find out why it deserves its own episode because it's a very small subset of intake. Yeah. You won't want to miss it.
That's right. Thanks, everybody. If you enjoyed today's episode of The Claim Game, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps new listeners to find us. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to The Claim Game on your favorite podcast app. Your feedback means so much to us. We want to provide valuable education about revenue cycle management. So if there's something we didn't cover in our topic that was a burning question for you, please let us know so we can try to get you the information you desire. You can find the links to all resources we mentioned in this episode in the show notes. And if you want to dive deeper into our resources, we have two places you can do that. First, you can go to our blog at practicesol.com/blog, where we have 8 years of educational blogs. If you want to learn more about what Practice Solutions does, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Just go to practicesol.com to learn more and to connect with one of our awesome people on our team. Thanks for listening. We are Jeremy and Kathryn Zug, and this is The Claim Game. See you at the game table next time.